On in the background.
You are. Hello, everybody. We are live. I am Elisa Meredith. We are here to talk about how to be remarkable with the remarkable Rich Brooks. Hey, Rich.
Howdy.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. Now, you are the owner of Flyte New Media. You run the Agents of Change conference.
Yes.
Tell us what else you do.
So the conference, it almost feels like a distant memory because of COVID, but we are going to bring it back, hopefully in 2022. Yes. Even though it usually leaves me a ball of jelly crying in the corner right before it happens, I'm always so ecstatic when I'm able to bring in all my friends and comrades into one place and we can all learn together is always excellent. So Agents of Change, I've been doing that for a while. The podcast is still going strong. We're up over episode 400 now. It happens almost every week. And I also have a kind of a side thing going on with another podcast called Fast Forward Maine, where it's more of like a general business podcast that's more targeted for growing businesses in Maine. Then I wrote a book a few years ago and called The Lead Machine, the Small Business Guide to Digital Marketing. And those are some big things going on right now.
All right. Well, that's pretty amazing. We have some friends here. Aside from my cat, we have Maureen. Hello. And Brian. Brian, we need to know where you are in the world right now. Last I knew it was Barcelona, but let me know where you are. Dara, hello, my friend. She's my neighbor, actually.
Hello, Dara.
Like one town over. So.
I thought I was going to see her like in the window behind you.
Oh no, wouldn't that be fun? That would be really fun. Okay. Oh my goodness. He's still in Barcelona. So jealous. All right. So we're going to talk about how to be remarkable. I always want your feedback, but I also want your examples. So when we talk about how to do a certain thing, it's always nice to put it in a context that really is going to help somebody who is here right now. Yeah. So don't be shy. Oh, the UK is too cold. You're talking to a person who grew up in Maine and someone who lives there now.
Mainer by choice.
Did you grow up in Maine? You did, didn't you?
No, I grew up in south of here, Massachusetts. So I grew up outside of Boston. And then back in 99, I made the move up to Maine and I've never looked back.
Oh, that's great. It's beautiful, but cold. All right. So let us talk about this, Rich. What are we talking about when you say remarkability?
All right. So it's a great question. And sometimes that term can feel intimidating to a lot of people. All of this came about because I've been doing this marketing thing for 24 years, been running my business for 24 years. And I've worked with just countless entrepreneurs, owners, marketers over the year. And a lot of what's going on is that people don't understand why people don't want to buy from them, why they're not paying attention to their marketing, why their message is getting lost in the shuffle. And a lot of times it's that they aren't talking about anything all that interesting or anything all that remarkable. And this is an idea that's fascinated me for quite some time. And I'm not the first person to talk about remarkability. You know, you've got people who have talked about in the past having a unique selling or a value proposition. There's the Blue Ocean Strategy. There's Seth Godin's The Purple Cow. So a lot of people over the years have recognized the importance of standing out online. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about being remarkable. And so one thing is the idea, like the word itself is intimidating until you start thinking about all it means is that you're doing something that's worth remarking upon. So it's not quite as scary as it first sounds like. The other thing is, and the reason why I call it the Remarkability Formula is I was trying to figure out a way to help people either on their own or in talking with me, chatting with me, is figure out how they go from being kind of blah to being remarkable, because there is a pathway, or there are, as I've kind of set up, there are 4 lenses that I use with people to help them kind of uncover what makes them remarkable, or to find something that could make them remarkable if they lean into it or to adopt it. So that's kind of what the Remarkability Formula is all about. Just helping people understand what makes them remarkable. But also when you've done this work, you find that you start attracting the right type of client and you start pushing away the wrong type of client. And if you're doing this long enough, you know that there is a wrong type of client. When you're first starting out, every client feels like the right kind of client. But over the years, you start to realize, like the phone rings and you're like, oh, I don't want to pick it up. That's a red flag that you've got the wrong kind of client. And also just to build up some barriers to entry into what you're doing so that people can't just copy what you're doing and suddenly they're doing the same thing. So to find some elements of remarkability that are challenging for other people to adopt. And then lastly, when you do this work, the idea is that your marketing becomes so much easier. You're not throwing as much money at your marketing. It's not taking you as long to do it because you're really focused on what makes you remarkable, which is what is the most interesting thing that goes on in marketing today anyway.
Have you ever met someone who is not remarkable?
Yes. I mean, I'd like to say no, right? I'd like to say no. I wouldn't say that they're not remarkable. I would just say that the way that they've set up their business is not really remarkable. I remember working with a client years ago, and they were selling a cheese that they were buying from another cheesemaker. The only thing that was even kind of vaguely interesting was just a little bit of the branding, but it wasn't even all that stand out. And they were just buying their cheese from one state and bringing it to this state and slapping, a state of Maine thing on them and wondering why nobody wanted to buy it. And I'm like, there's nothing really interesting in another block of cheddar cheese. So this was before I started doing the work. Maybe if I had known then what I know now, I might have started to work with them on what can you do to make this remarkable. But those are the kind of things that I've seen over the years where people just assume that everybody's going to be interested in what they're doing. And This is especially true, I find, in the nonprofit world, where people are doing good work. And so they're like, why aren't people, what we're doing is so important. And I'm like, yeah, but you're doing it in such an uninteresting or unremarkable way that you're not capturing the interest. Everybody, the old saw is everybody listens to the same radio station, WIIFM, what's in it for me. Right. So when they're scrolling through their feed, by the way, I can only, that joke is only, or that bit's only going to work for another 3 years and people are not going to understand what FM is anymore.
You're right. You're right.
I feel really caffeinated right now. I apologize. But the idea is that you still have to do something that's of interest or remarkable to the end user, not to yourself. You may feel you're doing remarkable work, but if you're not communicating how remarkable that is to the person you want to engage with, then it's not going to work. So that's part of the idea of remarkability, is understanding what somebody else would find remarkable about you.
Okay. I have a real tough question for you. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. What makes Rich Brooks remarkable?
Oh, I hate this question.
I didn't even put it in the agenda because
no, but I ask myself it all the time. It's not like I'm getting this from 1,000 other people. It's a good question. So if I'm thinking about it from a business standpoint, like I run Flyte New Media. And so I'm going to think about it more from Flyte's standpoint than me personally, because
that makes sense.
There's only so much therapy I can afford. It would be more like what makes Flyte remarkable is the fact, and it is related to me, that I've got this Rolodex of amazing people that I can pull into. And just before we got on, I said, hey, that client that we've worked with in the past, they want to see you again. So we're going to pull you back into this project. Like the ability for me to have like an Elisa Meredith on my team or on my roster and be able to pull them in, or a Jen Herman, or, all these people who I've connected with over the years from putting on my own conference and going other places, that is incredibly remarkable. And the other people who I compete with locally, they can't do the same thing. Like, yeah, they might be able to do a little research and find the right person to bring in, but that's just not what they're going to be best at, which is fine, because my competitors, most of them are remarkable in their own way. There's one company in town, they won't touch a non-e-commerce project. So all they focus on is, and that's one of the lenses is focus, but all they focus on is e-commerce websites and the marketing that goes around it. So that's what they're known for, and that's what makes them remarkable, along with some other things. So it's about understanding what makes you remarkable. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And there's some other things that I think helps Flyte stand out, but I would say that that's something that is very difficult for anybody locally to Maine to replicate. And it helps attract the right type of people, the people who are always looking for, well, what are the experts saying? What's cutting edge right now? What are some of the newest, freshest ideas? And I'm like, oh, let's go grab our favorite Pinterest person, our favorite Instagram person, our favorite Google ads. And I have all this expertise in-house, But sometimes it's just good pulling in somebody who does nothing else but that one thing. Because of course, when you're living and breathing that one little piece of information, you know it better than anybody else.
Good point. All right, if you're listening, I would love to hear what makes your business remarkable, or if you're struggling with it, let us know, and I know Rich can help you.
It would be so much fun to actually work through somebody's business and try and figure out what's remarkable about it.
Come on, Brian, Tara. I know Maureen had to hop. Holly's in Nova Scotia. She says it's beautiful there every single day. Wow.
I've always wanted to go to Nova Scotia. We used to have a cat ferry that went straight from Portland to Nova Scotia. Hopefully they'll bring it back one day.
Oh, that would be nice. Yeah. Oh, and Brian was designed to be near a sunny beach. I completely relate to that. All right. So you kind of hinted around about this, but like, what got you thinking about this, and why is it something that when I said, what do you want to talk about, like this was it?
So I talked about one aspect of it, and the fact that a lot of people don't understand what they should be doing in marketing. So they're throwing everything against the wall. They're not leaning into what makes them remarkable. The other thing is, you and I have both been to events like Social Media Marketing World, and there's a big focus on optimizing your website for search engines, or understanding Facebook ads or paid ads, or, really optimizing your Pinterest accounts. Those are all valuable things. But as more and more people, and that's really what separated me and Flyte at the beginning. Like, I was one of the first people in Maine to be talking about social media, going on TV, talking about it, doing presentations about it. I, with a couple friends, set up a big conference that ran for 3 years before I started doing Agents of Change. Like, that was very cutting edge. And just by talking about social media, that was remarkable, but it's not remarkable anymore. And I feel that these days, saying that you can do Facebook ads or that you can optimize a website for search engines is a valuable skill, but it's not a differentiator. The bottom line is you can learn Facebook ads from watching a few videos on YouTube, at least to get you started. So it's going to be like, knowing how to run Facebook ads is no longer going to be enough when it comes to marketing your business. That's like table stakes now. So if everybody knows how to optimize their website and everybody understands Facebook ads, how do you stand out? And one thing that will never really go out of fashion is the ability to really stand out from your competition and attract like-minded individuals who want to hire you. And so that's kind of where this whole idea of creativity and remarkability started to play around in my head. And then as I started to work on a new presentation, it started to really crystallize around the idea of remarkability and creating a formula that would help entrepreneurs and marketers and business people uncover what made their business remarkable.
Okay. All right. Well, we do have a couple of volunteers. I think I'm going to take Dara's comment as a volunteering.
As a hand raise? Yeah.
Yeah. Brian was the first one, though. Brian is a UK wedding photographer who's run off to Barcelona because he's cold. But he says his website is social, is solid-ish, but nothing that really grabs attention. And Dara is lying. She says, I've got nothing on being remarkable. We can talk about that later.
All right. So, obviously I'm not looking at the website, haven't seen it, but, I'll take your word for it. It's solid, but it doesn't stand out. We build websites. So of course I'm always interested in websites and how they convert and how they attract and everything like that. Obviously you can have a lot of beautiful photography. You're, obviously an amazing photographer. You're doing weddings, all that sort of stuff. But I'm sure there's a lot of other wedding photographers in the UK who have similarly, although not as good, beautiful photos on their website. So very briefly, the four lenses that I often talk about when it comes to remarkability is this idea of the four lenses are find, focus, fashion, and frame. So I'm going to quickly run through those, and then we'll kind of see if any of these kind of work for, was it Brian?
Brian, yep.
So find is there's already something remarkable about your business. And a lot of people don't even realize this, something that they can lean into. There's a reason why people choose you consistently over your competition. And in my presentation, I actually tell a story about the first time I was going to get my house painted. First time house owner, move in. They had always, it was just years that they hadn't painted the house, really needed it. I wasn't excited about this. I didn't know much, but I knew that the painters could be there for like a week or more, and just like didn't want this whole thing going on in my house for so long. And we interviewed a few people, and one of the guys said, I can do it in 2 days. And we're like, done, fine. He shows up with like 20 guys in 4 or 5 vans. They come out of the vans with their ladders. They hit every single board before the sun goes down. I think they were singing sea shanties, but I'm not entirely sure. I may be misremembering that. Fantastic. 2 days later, 2 days later, they come back again. Army of invading ants, hit the walls. Everything's done. Like you said, in 2 days. My neighbors, of course, took notice. It became a big topic of conversation, that how I had so many guys working on the house at the same time. That's remarkable. And that was something he was already doing. It was in the way that he delivered that product. And that was what made it remarkable. And it's very difficult to replicate that, because it's very hard to keep 20 guys on your team, especially in a place like Maine, which you can't easily paint year round. Like, it's a very seasonal business. So that was kind of remarkable what he did. So is there something in the pricing, in the people, in the product, in the delivery that you're doing that isn't just good, but is remarkably different than anybody else? And I don't know what that might look like, but in a photography business, it might have something to do with the way that you deliver these products. You know, maybe it's a different approach. Maybe you only offer print, or you only do black and white, or you have a bigger or a smaller team, or your price is so much lower or so much higher than anybody else. And I actually remember reading a story about a photographer who was doing family portraits and started treating them as if they were famous, or not famous paintings, but the way that people used to have their portraits done in the 1800s with a painter and all these sort of things. And he started going after these families who really weren't about to have the big painting job done, but wanted that level of sophistication, something they could hang on the mantle. And he would interview them and spend more time with them. And because of this, he could charge so much more. But that was his remarkability. So it could be that you're already doing something, but you just need to lean into it a little bit more so that you're known for that. And I don't know enough about your business to really know. Yeah. The next one is focus. And that's really just about niching down. Elisa is a great example of this. She focuses on Pinterest, where I'm a generalist. I do all of digital marketing and none of it well. This is why I hire more talented people than myself. But that's already a niche that she's carved out. So you've carved out somewhat of a niche in doing wedding photography versus maybe any type of photography. But are there other types of things that you might niche down further into? And what if you? And I'm not saying that any of these ideas would be good or bad, but what if you only did weddings that were on the coast, or narrowed the area that you were doing weddings, or you only did LGBTQ weddings and you got known for that in the industry, and you would only do those whatever it is, or you only did weddings that were when people were jumping out of planes. I don't know. And like I said, I'm just talking about being remarkable. You ultimately need to decide if these are good business decisions, but those are some of the things. When it comes to focus, it's very scary, because a lot of people feel that don't I want to get as much business as possible? Don't I want to open myself up to as many people as possible? Yeah. And while that's a natural feeling for most businesses, most small businesses, that's the absolute wrong direction to go into. The right direction is to really narrow, at least what you say you're willing to do, to shrink your delivery area, to lessen the number of ingredients that go into a product that you sell, to serve a smaller community. And by serving the smaller community, a few things happen. One is you get known really well in that community. And in social media, what I've seen is when people become Pinterest experts or Facebook ad experts, once they become experts in that, they end up then going to another category to dominate that category and bringing their audience with them. So that's one way that you can continue to grow your business. The other thing with focus is that you can start to charge a lot more. So by, let's say, just using, if you only did gay marriages. So you only do gay marriages, you get to be really well known in that community. And anybody who's asking a friend, hey, who did your wedding? Or do you know anybody? They're always going to recommend you. And so you just become that person that's doing those kind of weddings. And of course, people are going to want to choose you. But once they start choosing you over anybody else, you can also start to raise your prices, because we will always pay more for experts than for generalists. And when I was doing the research into doing this presentation, I stumbled upon this really interesting fact that back in 2017, this was the latest data they had, the average American primary care physician was making what I thought was a pretty astounding $247,000 a year on average.
Mm-hmm.
The average specialist for the same year made $399,000 on average. So like another $150,000 on top for knowing overall less and being able to help less people.
So
now, of course, they knew a lot more, but only in this very one category. So if you had a stomach ache and they're a knee surgeon, you're out of luck. But if all they did is knee surgeries, then you know that if you need a knee surgery, they're going to be better than your primary care visit. They're the expert. And it doesn't have to be surgery, but you get the idea that we're willing to pay more when we need that one thing. So that's often where the specialist, where the focus really can help grow your business. But it's also something from a marketing standpoint, if you only do knees, or you only do gay weddings, or you only do e-commerce, that's something to hang your hat on. And that's how you start to become remarkable. And the other thing I just want to say is, once you discover something remarkable about yourself or your business, don't stop. Go through all 4 lenses, gather everything that kind of separates you. So even things that might not seem super remarkable, when you start to pull them together and stack them upon each other, then suddenly you are remarkable because you're the only person, the best and the worst, in that particular category. So if people want something in that category, you're the person they're going to turn to.
Okay. I want to go back to something you said a couple minutes ago about the trajectory of people when they are experts on a topic. And I think sometimes we resist that kind of focus because, like you said, we don't want to exclude everything else. We're afraid to give up on something, or we're afraid that, like in my case, being known as a Pinterest expert, well, what happens if Pinterest goes away? Right. And we've seen this with our friends, right? When Google Plus went away, like there are people who hung all of their remarkability on being the expert in that.
Yeah.
But you and I have both seen as well that they don't just give up, right? They pivot. You can pivot.
Yes, exactly. And, whenever you're basing your specialty, like you or I, on somebody else's platform, you're at risk. There's no two ways about that. But by understanding one platform like Pinterest, you're going to be able to easily pivot into something similar, something that is visual, or also has SEO components, or also has an ad platform, because there's a certain amount of similarity between all of these different tools. And this is why it's also important, and this is not about remarkability, but just about marketing in general, is this is why you build your email list, or maybe one day your WhatsApp list or your SMS list, whatever it happens to be, because you want to have that connection to your audience regardless of platform. And that's what every social media guru, even if they're a Facebook expert, they're always trying to get you on their email list, because that is the one way that they can continue to stay in touch with you. So, but yeah, you can definitely pivot, and you may increase what you do, or you may also, I've talked to some businesses where it's like, well, I can't just stop doing, like all this other stuff because I can't rely on just this one type of client. And I'm like, great. Create, like, what are the top 3 types of businesses you like, or people you like to work with, and keep each one of those kind of in their own separate silo. So you work with parents, you work with teachers, you work with students, but you have a different conversation with each one of those. So that's another approach. Maybe you have to have more than one focus, which on some level intellectually may go against what I'm saying, but it's about really narrowing that focus as much as possible so that you're a specialist in one, or maybe 2 or 3 areas.
Could it be as well a matter of the way you communicate it? So let's see what Brian has to say. I guess if you were getting an extension done in your home, you'd call your painter crew and see if his brother is in construction.
That's certainly true. When I needed a heat pump, I called up my girlfriend's brother who helped sell the house, and I asked him who he knew because he was well connected. Yeah. I'm not sure if that would make them remarkable, but there is a certain amount of trust built up. As some people's remarkability may be in their connections to everybody else. And we've seen those people who just seem to always know who to talk to, and also always get recommended for jobs because they're so well connected.
Yes. Okay. And it wouldn't be a show without the cat. So welcome, Cat. Now, what if, you have your focus and you're really concentrating on that and becoming known for that, is it okay to have other things as well? So for example, I am known for Pinterest marketing and Pinterest advertising, but I also, when I start working with a client, we find out, oh, well, you need that foundation of the content, right? So I might help with content planning, content strategy. Oh, it would really work well if you were also using Instagram. So we move over there. But would it be safe to say, as long as like I keep like my focus on what I write about, what I talk about is Pinterest?
I would personally recommend using Pinterest as the thread. So it would be like, you're the Pinterest expert, but of course you recognize that the sun doesn't rise and set on Pinterest. So there are other elements of your business, but how can somebody who's got a strong Pinterest account start to leverage some of these other tools like Instagram or email marketing, or how do these connect? How are they similar? How are they different? How can you take all the work you've done in Pinterest and repurpose it, saving yourself time and energy in some of your other marketing campaigns? You've already done the hard work in Pinterest. You know what works and what doesn't work. That's a great indicator for what you should focus on in your email newsletter or your Facebook ads or whatever have you. So I'd lead with Pinterest, but I also understand how Pinterest connects to the rest of your marketing hub. And so that might be your in, but you'll start to find that people recognize that you're just a brilliant marketer and a brilliant strategist in general, as well as just having a focus or a passion around Pinterest.
Excellent. So Brian, I know you're still here. If you have figured out in these few minutes what your focus should be, pop it in the chat and we'll keep going with that illustration. The next one though is fashion. Are we talking about what you're wearing today?
No, this is not David Bowie or catwalks or anything like that. I use the word fashion to talk about when you are making something. You are fashioning something. And this, of all the four, is probably the one that people have the toughest time kind of wrapping their head around. So the idea here is there something that you are doing or could be doing that is in alignment with your mission, vision, or values, but isn't intrinsic to your offering? And let me give you a couple examples, because I know this one's a little bit ephemeral, if you will.
Yes.
One example that I absolutely love is Barilla Pasta. And Barilla is a popular pasta brand from Italy. And they have, obviously, we've all overcooked pasta, right? In fact, my girlfriend, who's Italian, claims I always overcook pasta, but I'm not a big fan of al dente. Anyway, I digress. So we've all had that moment where somebody walks in, we get distracted, and suddenly we've got a bowl full of mush. And so what Barilla did is they put together Spotify playlists that are the exact length of how long it takes to cook each version of their pastas. So you've got like Boom Bam Fusilli playlist, and you've got like all these different, and even like each one has their own style and vibe. So if you're in a mellow mood, you can listen to one. If you're in an upbeat mood, you can listen to another. But you tell your smart speaker, and I won't say Lexi's name out loud in case she's listening in another room, to play that playlist. And all of a sudden, like you're listening to great, usually they're Italian covers of songs you may already know. The artwork is Italian. And so, of course, you don't need this, right? You could set a timer. You could just say, hey, Lexi, set a timer for 9 minutes, because that's what it says on the side of the box, and she'll do just the same. But this is really fun and creative and does not change the pasta at all. It does not change the taste or anything. It might change the experience. It's fun and it's interesting. But the fact that they use a lot of Italian artists for music and Italian art for the cover art on these playlists is in alignment with their message that cooking is art. And of course they come from Italy. So it all works really well together. Plus, some of these playlists have like 20,000 likes on Spotify and all these followers. So obviously it's getting the attention of a lot of foodies and chefs and cooks around the world. And that's just a fascinating, interesting thing. You can probably cook other pasta to these playlists. I'm not saying you can't. The whole thing is this is extrinsic to what they're offering, but it's remarkable, and it gets people talking about what they're doing. So I think that's a fantastic example.
It is.
Closer to home, we've got Ben and Jerry's, and a few years ago they put together all these different delicious flavors, and they created an ice cream called Pecan Resist, which is delicious ice cream, but all of the money, or $100,000, whatever it was, from the profits of Pecan Resist went to these 4 progressive organizations. And basically Ben and Jerry's came out and said, we're against then President Trump's regressive, what they called regressive policies, and we want to fund the opposition. And they called it Pecan Resist. Now, they didn't have to call it that. They could have called it anything, and people would have thought it was delicious, and life would go on. Now, of course, they got a lot of people who were like, I will never eat this ice cream. I will never eat Ben and Jerry's again. But on the other side, they had people who are so into this, and they love the idea of it, and they raised money for it. And if you look at their social media activity around the launch of this ice cream versus some of their non-political ice creams, it's night and day. They got so much attention. They got written up in all these different magazines. There was so much talk about it online. It was amazing. And of course, it doesn't have to be political. Political may not be what your mission or vision or values around, but that's a big part of who Ben and Jerry's are. And they wanted to lean into it, and they got a lot of conversation started around this. I say nobody in America would buy a My pillow just to get a better night of sleep. Like, you're only buying that pillow because you're buying it because you believe in this guy and his belief system, or you're not going to buy it because you would never give money to this guy. Those are the only people that's how you make your choice on that particular product. And a lot of us like to buy products that are in alignment with our worldview. So if you have an opportunity to find a mission or a vision or value that's in alignment with you, and again, pulling in those like-minded people who will always want to work with you, that's a great thing.
Those are great examples. That's more like a consumer product good kind of example.
Yes.
So I would like to know, have you figured out how to do this for Flyte?
I didn't plan on doing it, but
Okay.
I would argue that my Agents of Change conference became a fashioned piece of remarkability. And by that, I mean, so I started this conference in part because I was going to things like Blog World and South by Southwest. I was actually a year ahead of the first year of Social Media Marketing World. But I was like, I go to these events, people from all over the world come there. It changed my business. It changed my life going to some of these digital marketing conferences. How come we can't have anything like this in Maine? So I brought back that idea. I said, and plus, then we were talking about before, I'm connected to all these amazing experts. Yeah. I'll just convince them to come to Maine. Very often over a bottle of tequila late at night at Blog World, I'd say, yeah, you should come to Maine. I'll fly you out. All you have to do is speak. And that became this really amazing event. It was just what I want to do. I want to have kind of a marketing party in my own backyard with all these great speakers. But what I found happened is a lot of people started coming to the event locally, and they would see me on stage, and they'd see me talking about Flyte New Media, and they'd see me talking about Agents of Change, and they put the 2 and 2 together. And over the years, when I asked people, hey, how did you hear about me? How'd you hear about Flyte New Media? They'd say, oh, I've been going to the Agents of Change conference for years, but I'm finally ready for a website, or I'm finally ready for SEO. So you don't have to go to the conference to hire Flyte. And you can go to the conference and never hire Flyte. Like, it's not intrinsic to our business offerings. But Agents of Change is more of an aspirational brand. Like, let me show you how you can do this on your own. And Flyte New Media is more like, let me take this burden off of you. Right. But it's the same thing. But the mission and the idea is you can reach your ideal customers through search, social, and mobile marketing. Like, that's the idea behind both brands. One is more of a done for you, and one is a more of a let me point you in the right direction kind of a thing. But it has definitely generated, like, it's a break-even event in terms of the time we put into it and the money we get out of it. But then when we look at all the leads that we get out over the course of years, it's become a huge part of our business.
That's fantastic. I was at the last one. That's the last time I got on a plane, actually. And it has a very different feel to it than the big conferences. I really like that a lot. And I think that does reflect that you have this circle, a big circle of people that you know and that tend to all know each other too. It just feels like a little bit like Old Home Week in a smaller setting than some of the giant conferences.
That's what I'm going for. That's what I feel. I mean, I love Social Media Marketing World, and I miss Blog World from back in the day, but it's a huge event. And, something like Agents of Change is just, somebody once told me it's a right-sized event. It's like 300 to 400 people. And the speakers have come in and been like, I've never been so welcomed by an audience in my entire life. And everybody's just so friendly here. And it's like, that's awesome. It's great to hear. And that's been the vibe I've been going for. I want people to learn a lot, and I want them to network with other people and have a good time. I want them to walk away with a very positive experience. And luckily, I don't know if it's my superpower or I'm blessed, a lot of amazing people come into my life, and I'm just able to kind of pull together this party/conference.
I love it. Phoebe has a thought here. Maybe we can help. She says, it seems to me that I've heard that advice before as be opinionated. Don't be afraid to state your core values, like the Ben and Jerry's example. And she says that she doesn't do that because she feels like her followers like her because she only talks about one basic topic. But I can see the value of that advice for other niches.
It's a difficult path to sometimes walk, Phoebe's mom. And I would say that if it makes sense for you, then do it. And other times don't. I mean, I've had conversations with people where they share their political beliefs and I'm like, okay, we're not going to work together so well. So, it can be a way of pushing certain people away. I would just leave yourself open to it and say, if I started sharing a little bit more, might I attract people who I'm more in alignment with, who might be better clients for me, and who would get more out of me? We all have those clients who we don't like working with. They beat us up on price, this, that, and the other thing. They push back. They don't value us. If there was a way for us to avoid those kind of people and only get the people who really appreciate what we're doing, that would help. And when we like the people we're working with, everything tends to work a lot better. I don't know what your personal beliefs or the things you've thought about talking about are. And the other thing about like, be opinionated, be remarkable. I'm not claiming that I invented the Coke serum here or anything like that. What I'm talking about is what other people have talked about. It's just a different way of approaching it. So I would say is maybe try a test balloon. Talk about one thing that's a little bit outside, but isn't in alignment with the audience. You probably have a pretty good sense of what your audience is into or not. There are times in a certain group I may talk about a subject, and other times I know, it's probably just best I keep that personal opinion to myself. And that's a decision you'll have to make. Ben and Jerry's leans into their political beliefs. I will sometimes spout my political beliefs on social media, but I tend to keep that more to a group of friends when we're sitting around drinking beers by the campfire.
Yeah, so it definitely does not have to be political.
No, in fact, that's a dangerous one. There could be some other ones that are like Barilla and, cooking is art. Like they did that sort of thing. So there's a lot of other opportunities besides a controversial one. There's some psychological benefits. Yeah, there's some psychological benefits to taking a really extreme opinion of something that will attract people to you, and you set up an us versus them. That gives me a stomachache, so I can't do it, but I've seen people successfully do it quite a bit in politics and in business throughout. It just depends on the kind of person you are.
Love it. Okay. All right, so now we have fashioned our remarkability. What's the last one? We had find, focus, fashion.
Yeah, the last one is frame. And this is really just about how you might position yourself in the marketplace. So maybe it's things that you're already doing, but you're leaning into them in a slightly different way or explaining it in a slightly different way. The example that I often give is a story. It was actually on my podcast, but it was also in a book by, of course, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he wrote The Introvert's Edge, Matthew Pollard. And he talks about one of his clients, and she taught Mandarin in the San Francisco Bay Area, very successful for years. And then all of a sudden, she was competing against all these upstarts locally who were charging a lot less than she had because they needed the business. And for them, getting $30 an hour was more than enough, where she was had been commanding a much higher price, but suddenly she wasn't getting as much business. And on top of that, this is around the time, the internet's popping up everywhere, and suddenly there are people in China who are doing this stuff remotely, and you can't compete on price with that. Right. So she was struggling, and she was, feeling like she was going to go out of business. And he kind of looked at her business model, and he noticed that there were two business people that she was working with, and he asked about it, and both of them had recently been transferred to work in China from their companies. Not only was she teaching them Mandarin, but she was also showing them how to behave in a business environment, like what was considered to be polite and acceptable, what wasn't acceptable behavior. And also she was doing some extra work training or doing translation services, speaking services with the spouses and children to get them acclimated to what life would be like in China. Nice. And he said, and it was all just part of what she was doing. And he's like, oh, so you're actually helping people succeed in China. And she's like, well, yeah, I guess. And he's like, great. From now on, you're the China success coach. And so that
that's
reframed
amazing.
the entire discussion. And then she only started going after business people. But not only that, they actually went after they were like basically, I can't think of the name of the job right now, but they were the people who helped the companies move people abroad. And so whatever that job was, it wasn't HR, but it was something like that. That's people talking about the skills that they had.
We're having a little bit of a connection problem.
This might. Sometimes these wonderful iPods will suddenly pick up the phone when I'm on a conversation, and spam risk was trying to reach me.
Okay.
So anyway, what I was going to say is that so they went after these people who were first. So suddenly she's getting only the best possible clients who she can help the most. She's no longer competing with anybody else. And so this is kind of like it was reframed, but then on top of that, it was a little bit of focus where she was only willing to work with one type of person who was referred to a bunch of other business. So again, it's about leveraging multiple of these lenses. So you really get to this place where there's nobody who can compete with you. You're the only person who's offering this exact thing. And then that becomes so much easier for your marketing because then you're the China success coach, which is a great name, by the way. And suddenly it's like, oh, you're sending somebody to China. You got to go meet this woman over here. She is going to teach you Mandarin. She's going to work with your husband and kids. So they're used to, they're ready for the travel, all this stuff. And businesses loved it because it's so expensive to move people to China only to see them fail over there. And she was greatly increasing their chances. So they were willing to pay a premium for that level of work. So again, that's what makes you stand out.
So smart. I love that. And the way that she just kind of naturally, or maybe it was conscious decision, but moved towards those people for whom her services were exceptionally valuable, as opposed to the hobbyist, right? Who might want to learn Chinese, but it doesn't really matter if they do or not. She got somebody who had a lot of skin in the game. That was very smart. Very smart. Again,
finding that right type of client. When you do this work, when you go through it yourself or, work with your team on it, it really can help you better identify who you should be talking to, what channels you should be on. So it really influences and informs your marketing going forward.
Okay. So in doing this work, has this kind of impacted Flyte New Media and the people you work with and how you work with people?
It definitely has. We've always asked questions like about, what do you do differently than everybody else? But the bottom line is it was never quite as formalized as this. And like I said, it's only been in this past year. So we're just starting to really roll it out as part of what we do. But it's something that I'm fascinated by because I do think that any business could be remarkable, even though not all of them are yet. And so it's just a matter of really working through this. And I would just say, for anybody who is tuned in and would like to go through this, right now, I'm in a process where I'm taking on free consults. So if somebody was like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out for myself, I actually, I don't know if we didn't talk about this, Elise. I hope this is okay. It's totally free. I'm not charging for this.
Please.
If they go to theagentsofchange.com/remarkability, just fill out that form right there and we'll schedule a time together. And I'm just trying to get some more experience on what kind of questions I should be asking people and how it can help them and how to improve this all the more. And so I'm not taking any money at this point for this. I just want to learn more about your business and figure out if I can help you really understand your own remarkability.
Wonderful. Right. We're posting that link there in the comments. Again, that was theagentsofchange.com/remarkability.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's assume that we have all been doing this in our heads as we listen to you and we've figured out all of this. Now, what do we do? Like on a day-to-day tactical level, what do I do with the knowledge that I am remarkable because I am the China coach?
Right. So some of this is going to be in your messaging. And I do believe that you should be consistent across all channels. So whether you're the China success coach or the wedding photographer success coach, whatever it is, the Pinterest success coach, part of it's going to be in your messaging. So you might get lucky enough that you would come up with something as memorable as a China success coach or whatever it may be. But again, it's also about, at that point, you should have a really good sense of who your audience is and where they hang out online. So it is going to help inform where you should be spending your time. Maybe you realize that, I had really not paid attention to Pinterest, but now I realize that a lot of my audience might be hanging out there. So it might be about going to that space. That's going to be part of it. You might start to niche down geographically, which is a big one. So that might inform where you are going to advertise. Facebook ads, I believe promoted pins, but I'm not entirely sure. I leave this to you. And Google ads, you can all tailor those down to zip codes. And Facebook, sometimes even neighborhoods. So those are things that you can do as well. So it can really inform where you're going to go with that. And the other thing is just, again, in that messaging. So just making sure that you keep on talking about the most important things. I can get a house painted in 2 days. I can make your transfer to the Chinese office incredibly successful. I'm going to make your wedding the most memorable thing ever, because now I've got a 3D printer and I print out the wedding photo, your favorite wedding photo, as part of the package, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So just do so, and then it's about doing that level of remarkability. And again, remarkability is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. So it's not what you think it's remarkable. It's about what your audience thinks is remarkable. So just make sure, if you do have a business that's already going strong or going, talk to your current clients, customers. Why do they choose you? What made them or helped them with that decision? That's usually a good sign of what is already in your business or falls under find. But then you can add some of these other elements like focus, fashion, and frame to really help yourself stand out.
Oh, I love that. Anybody have some great examples to share? I have one that comes to mind. When my father and his wife bought a house, his realtor bought them an extremely expensive bottle of champagne. And they kept that in their fridge for years. And every time you look at it, of course, you think of the realtor. I mean, maybe that's too easy, but it was effective for her.
I think that's a good one. I mean, but a lot of people do that. It would be even more remarkable if he sent them a bottle every single year. So that would be a way. Now that may get super expensive. I'm not, like I said, there may be times that an idea would be remarkable, but a terrible business decision, right? Because like pricing is one of the things that we didn't talk too much about it today, but there are times when I say you can be remarkable in pricing, that doesn't mean lower your prices. That could be a terrible business decision. But you think about, for the people who are old enough, Columbia Record House. 11 albums for a penny, right? It's like a penny. That is insane. It's remarkable. Not only that, I don't even have to go down to the local record store. I'm going to get a catalog each month those are things that that's amazing. And it's 1 cent. But on the other hand, you have something like Grey Goose vodka that was always going to be an expensive vodka. But when they came out, they could have competed with the premium brands of the day, which were about $17 a bottle. Instead, they created a new category called super premium or ultra premium. I forget what it was. Super premium, I think it was, charged $30 a barrel or $30 a bottle. And they couldn't keep up with demand because people needed that extra level of sophistication, right? They wanted to show that they could afford Grey Goose vodka. And so they put it prominently in their liquor cabinets. And when they sold just a few years later, they sold for $2 billion to Bacardi. So that is an example of sometimes going really expensive can be remarkable. People talked about it and it changed behavior. So there's a lot of interesting ways that you can go about figuring out what your remarkability is.
Well, we have Phoebe Moon saying that that's an excellent form for encouraging people to figure this out themselves. So I'm guessing the actual form that we're filling in over agentsofchange.com/remarkability.
It does help frame that conversation. And if you do want to book time with me, it's a great way for me just to learn a little bit more about your business before we get started.
Okay. Well, anybody have any questions out there? Feel free to send them all in. Is there anything that you've learned in this process and doing this for yourself, which I think is the hardest thing of all, right?
It is very challenging to do it for yourself, yeah. Because you're like, I'm not remarkable. Who am I to say that?
I know, right? It's almost easier to ask somebody else. Is there anything that you have learned that you feel like if I had known this 25 years ago, would have changed everything?
Well, maybe not 25 years ago, because the things I think that are remarkable about Flyte have happened more recently, but I understand your question. I definitely would have leaned into certain things a little bit sooner, like just leveraging that network. Like why I didn't do that years before, it's an unfortunate thing. I don't worry about it too much. I just look forward, but that is really helpful. Also, the amount of time that we've wasted going after the wrong type of clients or marketing something that's really not very interesting or that everybody else is doing. There's just a lot of lost effort. So I do wish that I kind of could sit down with my younger self and say, here are some of the things that are going to make you stand out. But when I first started, I had never taken a business course in my life. I just kind of learned along the way. And so I didn't think about it like, what's going to help me stand out? So I just wish I had gone through a process like this much earlier on. And and you're not going to get it right the first time, but it's about this process of getting closer and being like, oh, I think this is what makes me remarkable. And then putting that out into the marketplace and finding out, well, it's not exactly that, but there are elements of this. And let me try this over here. And it's that experimentation, which makes life so delicious, but also is how you get better over time. So that would probably be my answer, is like, just start as soon as you can with this and try it out and see what really sticks with people and resonates with people.
Yeah. Do you think it would be helpful to ask your peers and your friends?
I think it would be more helpful to ask your customers and your clients, because the problem with friends and family is they could be your biggest cheerleaders, and that could be exactly what you don't want. Yeah. So they're like, oh, everything about you is remarkable. And then a pinch of it, right? That's not helpful. But if you ask, and I would actually ask some of your most troubling clients. I'd ask a wide variety, but sometimes it's the most challenging clients. I have clients that are tough, but they make me better, right? And those are the clients I want to understand. Like, what is it? Why do you keep sticking with me if you keep complaining? And they'll tell you, well, because you do all these things right. Now, they may just be a little bit of a hard bottom, but the bottom line is they're kind of, I don't know if this is a G-rated show. So
yeah.
They can be really tough, but they can also be very honest and give you some really insightful reasons on why they chose you and why they're sticking around and all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot of different ways that you can be remarkable. And you may think that everybody's choosing you because of this one thing, and actually it's because of this result they get over here. So I would first talk to your current clients and even past clients before, asking your mom or your friends is fine, but they're not doing business with you. So right. I don't think that they're going to be the best people to ask.
Yeah. So you're actually doing some product marketing for your business as opposed to a product itself, which is very cool. Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Well, everyone, you can
to answer Brian Farrell, I would just say if Brian's saying free, then the answer is yes, free. Like, there's not a sales thing at the end. I mean, obviously, if you want to hire me, great. But no, I'm gathering data. And what you're getting out of it is you're getting free consulting. So it's like just kind of like we're working together to make the world a better place, 2 companies at a time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for coming on, Rich.
That was great. I love seeing you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. My fellow Mainer, I always get a little homesick this time of year. So I appreciate you coming on.
Anytime you want to swing by.
I know.
Hello. We'll go grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee.
Looking forward to the next Agents of Change. That's going to be great.
Me too.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and we will talk soon.
Thanks. Great questions, everyone.
Bye.